Scientists are exploring the possibility that stress is contagious amongst people. Is it possible that the transferable relationship of stress responses along with widespread anxiety and social media-induced isolationism is responsible for the global rise of totalitarianism that we've seen? I'm Yasmin Khan with The Breakdown, and while that premise might seem like a bit of a leap to some of you, it makes sense when you break it down. But let's start with the stress premise. Neuroscientists have noticed patterns of transferable stress between animals. For instance, when mice are under stress, their bodies release a stress pheromone that, when sniffed by other mice, triggers the same stress response in them. In that way, stress is literally contagious from mouse to mouse. Similarly, scientists have seen that groups can be successful in pacifying the stress of individuals through loving and caring gestures. For example, vampire bats allay stress and anxiety responses in other bats by feeding them, which is super relatable. My mother literally does this. It's a very natural response to want to feed people who are under some sort of duress, and it's even natural to get some sort of satisfaction from seeing others eat. Mothers specifically are interesting. Studies found that baby chicks and baby calves recover more quickly from physical or emotional stress just by being near their mothers. Now, as humans, we know that the moods of others can affect our own moods, whether we like to admit that or not. We like to think of ourselves as individuals unaffected by those around us, but the reality is that we're a species that thrives in collectivism. By prioritizing the individual at the expense of the collective, we deny facets of our humanity. And just because we deny certain mechanisms doesn't mean that they're not still functioning and affecting us. So next, let's look at the impact social media can have on our psyches, both individual and collective, specifically during the pandemic. One study found that people tend to cope with stress in their lives in one of two ways, either by searching for solutions to the stressor or by attempting to regulate their emotional response to the stressor without actually addressing the stressor itself. Social media allows people to do both of those things. For example, people can do research on social media to educate themselves on whatever's bothering them so that they can better understand their issue and then better tackle it. Alternatively, people can post about their personal experiences, commiserate with others in similar situations, or just distract themselves from their problems. However, research performed during the pandemic found that social media use did not enhance overall well-being among adults. Instead, it's been found to lead to addictive behaviors, especially when social media was being used in an effort to compensate for psychological issues. And the irony of social media use is that even though it's called social, it can oftentimes lead to isolationism or feelings of isolationism. We find niches and nooks within the digital realm that systematically cut us off from diversity of thought and ideas, successfully narrowing our own thoughts and worldviews and increasing feelings of stress, anxiety, and fear. And fear is our next stop on the way to totalitarianism. Now, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know when I say that many of us, not just in this country but around the world, live in constant fear of something or other. Some of those fears are very real and others simply are not, but either way, we've become a global society driven and motivated by fear. What's worse is that we've become addicted to it. Doom scrolling is a term that I'm sure most of you are already familiar with, but it's when we sit on our phones and scroll through social feeds, essentially seeking out things that make us feel terrible or afraid. While psychological effects of this are easy to imagine, doom scrolling has adverse physical manifestations as well. It increases feelings of fear and stress, which can affect our overall moods, but it can also increase our levels of anxiety and depression. It can disrupt our sleep, which has a whole host of negative impacts on our health, and over prolonged periods of time, it can lead to hypertension, increasing our risk of heart-related issues like heart attacks and strokes. But we can't stop scrolling. We can't get away from it, and our leaders know this. Between political figures and the media, fear sells. Fear keeps people engaged. Fear feeds the doom that we've all become addicted to, so headlines and social posts are often fear-based. Fear sparks outrage, which drives engagement, which drives profits. That's a common chain of events that we're all familiar with at this point, and it helps us to understand why social media algorithms hardly seem considerate of our collective mental health. But fear also leads to feelings of desperation. Take the climate issue for one. What can be done about it? What is being done? What isn't being done? Why isn't enough being done? And why can't I do anything about it besides beg someone else to do something? And what sort of hellscape will our beautiful planet become within just a few years? Now, we see fear-mongering from both sides of the political spectrum, generally with each side instilling fear amongst their supporters that the other side will take over and ruin everything. Again, those fears can be real or perceived, but really, the difference is negligible. The function of fear still remains. Widespread fear, which we've seen at unprecedented levels thanks to the advent of social media, has led to claims from both the left and the right that the other side is suffering from something called mass psychosis or mass delusion, though some psychologists argue that these terms are clinical and shouldn't be used or applied lightly. The terms are often invoked in an effort to explain the proliferation of ungrounded belief systems, for example, vaccine paranoia, election denialism or climate denialism, and any other number of conspiracy theories that have taken root in the mainstream narrative. Mass psychosis and mass delusion are thought to be linked to conspiratorial thinking, illogical thinking, and confirmation biases. For reference, a commonly cited example of this are the Salem witch trials. However, according to psychiatrist Dr. Joe Pierre, quote, vaccine hesitancy, claims of election tampering, belief in a deep state, and the rise of other anti-establishment and populist ideals with their slippery slope to embrace of authoritarianism should be understood as byproducts of pervasive mistrust, making all of us vulnerable to misinformation, along with the deliberate use of disinformation as political propaganda. This is much less evidence of psychopathology or mass delusion than it is partisan-motivated reasoning and denial symptomatic of a sick society and a democracy in peril. But whatever you want to call it, Dr. Pierre hits on two key points. The first, the rise of anti-establishment and populist ideals with their slippery slope to embrace of authoritarianism, and second, the deliberate use of disinformation as political propaganda. Fear that is deliberately cultivated amongst a population leads to a population that is desperate for solutions, desperate for a return to normalcy, and desperate for relief from that fear. Desperate, helpless, and disconnected people have few options to confront their fears as individuals, so they look to individuals who have the power and authority to actually do something about the source of their fears. And we all remember Trump's infamous words, "I alone can fix it." It's a tale as old as time. You fabricate a problem or inflate an existing problem, you manufacture and monetize fears surrounding the problem, and then you offer yourself as a solution, the only solution. Desperate people love a despot, and in exchange for allowing that person to solve the masses' problems, the masses surrender their freedoms, the same freedoms that many of them are so desperate to hold on to. We've created for ourselves a perfect storm from collectively shared and contagious stress responses to fear-based belief systems and actions to mass desperation for freedom from our fears. Ultimately, the takeaway is that we've allowed ourselves to become isolated from one another, choosing to fear others rather than to love them in a way that would build connectivity and community. While the United States is often classified as an individualistic nation, which certainly serves the pro-capitalistic narrative, human beings, Americans or otherwise, are not meant to be individualistic. We need to look out for each other, and no one person, especially not a politician, is going to save us from ourselves. All right, that's it for me. Hopefully I gave you a lot to think about and explore further from this point, but if you got something out of this, please like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Thanks.